My name is Kael. If you are reading this, it means the flame still burns, but it won't last forever. Nothing does. Only fire lives long enough to be feared. I was born in the 6th winter, after the spark of Iran was discovered. My mother died. During my birth, my father was killed 3 moons later, on a failed hunt. I was raised by warriors who taught me how to survive, not how to live. There was no love, only cold, pain, and hunger. No lullabies, only the cracking of bone and the howling wind. The first time I truly saw fire, I was just a boy. My father was bleeding from his ribs, mauled by a mountain wolf. The snow was thick, the sky silent. He knew he wouldn't survive the journey back, so he gave me what mattered most. Not food, not tools, but fire. I watched him set himself ablaze to keep me warm through the night. I didn't sleep. I just sat there, alone, watching the flames devour the last person who cared if I lived or died. By morning, he was ash. I smeared it across my chest and carried his burnt bones back to the clan. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. Something inside me had turned to stone. That day, I learned what fire truly is. Not a gift, but a trade. It gives warmth, but only after it takes something from you. 13 winters have passed since then. Now, I am a hunter, a flame bearer. I carry the spark of Oren in a leather pouch strapped to my chest. It is small, but alive. A single ember from the sacred fire once protected by the southern temples. We stole it. We ran. Now we are hunted. It began at dawn. Tarag, our silent brute, woke me with a heavy hand. Ina, the youngest of us, was whispering to the bones, reading omens. Vara, our leader, was already ahead, tracking. She doesn't waste words. She moves like a shadow and kills without hesitation. We were following the trail of a wounded megastag, hoping for enough meat to last through the next storm. But something felt wrong. The blood trail was too clean. The trees were too still. And the snow, it smelled of smoke. Then I saw him, standing on the rocks above us, half covered in soot, eyes hollow. One of the Ash clan. They used to be like us, until they touched fire and went mad. Now they live in caves, wrapped in ash and silence, believing fire is cursed. They hunt anyone who dares to carry it. I signaled to Vara. She nodded once. Tarag raised his club. Ina clutched her charm. I reached for my blade, but it was too late. They were already around us. The ambush came fast. Spears flew from the trees. One struck Tarag in the shoulder. He didn't flinch. He crushed 2 of them before falling to his knees. Vara disappeared into the trees, shouting my name, something she never does. Ina was hit in the leg and fell screaming. I ran toward her, but they closed in. I had no choice. I turned and fled, clutching the pouch with the spark against my chest. The fire was hot, burning through the leather, searing my skin. I didn't care. If the flame died, we all died. The cold would return. The beasts would win. I ran through the trees, heart pounding, blood dripping from my side. Behind me, the Ash clan screamed their death chants. Ahead, only forest and fog. Now I'm hiding in a cave, alone. My breath is shallow. My hands are shaking. The ember still glows, faint but alive. They're close. I can hear them outside, searching. They think they can take it. But I've seen what happens when the fire is gone. I've seen babies freeze before they take their first step. I've seen darkness swallow hunters whole. So let them come. Let them hunt me. I won't run again. If I fall, the fire falls with me. And if that happens, may the world freeze with it. The cold hit harder once I stopped moving. My legs were shaking, my breath shallow, and each heartbeat echoed like a drum in my skull. I leaned against the cave wall, pressed the pouch with the spark tighter against my chest, and listened. Nothing. No wind. No steps. No voices. But silence is never safe. Not out here. I scanned the entrance. The Ash clan never moves alone, and they don't leave trails. If they were following me, I wouldn't see them until the spear was already in my back. I knew I couldn't stay here long. The spark needed air, and I needed distance. I unwrapped it, just enough to check. A single ember, glowing red like a sleeping eye, still alive. I whispered to it, not because I believed it could hear me, but because I needed to hear myself. Just a little longer, I said. Don't die before I do. I wrapped it again, strapped it to my chest, and crawled out. The snow had covered most of my tracks. That was good, but it also made it harder to know where I was. The trees looked the same, the rocks, the same. Everything out here felt like a trap waiting to close. I moved north toward the river cliffs. If I could make it there before nightfall, I might have a chance to loop back toward the others, if they were still alive. As I walked, I kept thinking about Ina. She was bleeding when I left her. I hate that I left her. I had no choice, but the thought kept tearing through me like a blade. I had promised her, before we left, that I'd protect the spark and bring her back home. I was only doing half of that now. The snow grew deeper. My boots sank with each step. I kept my hands on my spear, my eyes sweeping side to side. Every sound, a cracking branch, a whisper of wind, felt like a warning. Then I saw it. Blood. Dark red spots, scattered in the snow, half covered by ice. Fresh. I crouched down, touched it. Still warm. I followed it. The trail curved through the trees, past a line of broken rocks, and led me to something I never expected. A camp. Not ours. Ash clan. Small, hidden between fallen trees, built low to the ground. No fire. Just bones, hides, and silence. Then I saw her. Enna. She was tied to a stake, knees in the snow, head slumped forward. Her leg was wrapped in something dark. Not a bandage, more like old cloth. She was alive, but barely. I took one step forward, and a crunch beneath my foot gave me away. I froze. From the trees, two figures appeared, painted in ash, eyes glowing with hatred. One held a bone spear, the other a jagged flint blade. Neither spoke. They just moved, slow and deliberate. I gripped my weapon. I wasn't strong enough to take both. Not with Ina unconscious, not with the spark at risk, but I couldn't leave her again. I wouldn't. I raised my spear. The one with the knife lunged first. I dodged, swung low, hit his knee, but not hard enough. He slashed at me, catching my arm. The other came from the side, but I dropped to the ground, rolled beneath his strike, and stabbed up. The spear hit bone. He screamed. That was when Ina woke. She looked up, weak, bloodied, and saw me. "Kael," she whispered, barely a breath. The second attacker grabbed my wrist, tried to twist the weapon from my hand. I kneed him in the gut, shoved him off, and threw the spear like I'd done 100 times in training. It hit his chest. Deep silence. I dropped to my knees next to Enna, cut her bindings with the knife from the body, and held her face. "I told you I'd come back," I said. She smiled barely. "You're late." I carried her away before more of them could return. Back into the woods, farther from the river. We found a hollow beneath a fallen tree, just big enough to hide for the night. I started a tiny fire with dry moss and flint, careful not to let it grow too bright. Ina slept beside it, breathing shallow but steady. I didn't sleep. Not that night, not with blood on my hands, and more surely coming. The Ash clan wouldn't stop. Not until they had the flame, and now they knew exactly who carried it. I don't remember how long I walked. The cold blurs time. Ina was still too weak to stand, so I carried her over my shoulder, step after step, through snow that reached my knees. I couldn't let her die. Not after what I saw in her eyes back there, that spark of belief that I would save her. The fire in my pouch flickered, but it was still alive. That was all that mattered. If it went out, there would be nothing left to protect. No warmth, no hope, no tribe. By midday, the sky turned darker, heavy with snow. The wind began to cut deeper. I knew we had to find shelter before the storm swallowed us. I scanned the cliffs ahead, jagged rocks, twisted trees, and shadows that moved even when nothing else did. And then I saw it, a split in the stone, barely wide enough for a man to pass through a cave, maybe deeper. I pushed inside with Ina in my arms, the cold air vanishing the moment we crossed the threshold. It was quiet, too quiet, like the cave was holding its breath. I lowered Ina onto a bed of moss near the wall, gave her the last of our dried meat, and searched deeper inside with the torch. The cave was larger than I expected. It curved downward, into the earth like a throat. Bones lined the edges, animal bones, mostly, but some were human, old, ancient. I followed the passage deeper until the walls changed. They weren't just rock anymore. They were painted, symbols, marks, stories. I held the torch up to the stone. Figures drawn in blood and charcoal, hunters, beasts, fire, death. But one image stood out, a man standing in front of a burning tree. All the other men bowed. Behind them, a woman holding a spark in her hands. Her face was hidden, but her presence felt real. I had never seen this symbol before, not in any of our elder caves. It wasn't a warning, it was a prophecy. And then I saw something else, carved low, almost at ground level, a shape, a bowl, shallow and circular, cut into the floor. Inside it, still intact, after who knows how many winters, was ash. I dropped to my knees. My heart pounded. I knew what this place was. This was a birthplace, not of people, of fire. Set my spark gently into the carved bowl. The ember hissed and glowed brighter, as if it recognized where it was. I could feel the warmth fill the space around me, like the cave itself was waking up. And that's when I heard the voice. It wasn't spoken. Not really. It was something inside me, a pressure, a knowing. The one who carries fire must bleed. To feed it, I stared at the ember, then at my hand. Without thinking, I took the blade at my side, drew a thin line across my palm, and let the blood drip into the bowl. The ember flared. It didn't grow. It didn't explode. It simply came, alive. I sat there for a long time, watching it burn, my hand clenched and bleeding, my mind racing. What was this place? Who built it? How did they know? When I returned to Ina, her fever had broken. She looked stronger, her eyes clearer. "You found something," she said. I nodded. "A story written in fire." Her brow furrowed. "That sounds dangerous." We stayed there through the storm. 3 days, maybe 4. I lost count. I studied the cave every hour. Every wall told part of a larger story. A story of fire, of betrayal, of clans rising and burning because they forgot what fire demands. It doesn't ask permission. It doesn't grant favors. It consumes. When the snow finally stopped, I wrapped the spark in fresh leather and prepared to leave. Ina stood beside me, still limping, but strong. "We need to find Vara," she said. I nodded. "And Torag, if he's alive." She looked down the path outside the cave, the endless white ahead of us. "They'll be waiting, I know." I looked back one last time at the glowing ember in the cave. "We're not just hunters anymore, Ina. We're the last ones carrying the flame, and they're coming to take it." She didn't speak. She didn't need to. We walked out into the cold, and the fire followed. They scattered like leaves. When the Ash clan struck, we had no time to regroup. I saw Turag fall with a spear in his side. I saw Ina's blood on the snow, and I saw Kael, the one who carries the spark, run into the trees. That was the only smart thing he did. I didn't chase him. I led 2 of the attackers away, drawing them through the ice fields. They were fast, but I knew the terrain. They didn't. I moved low, near the ground, where the snow was thinner and the roots could trip the untrained. I led them straight to the edge of the cliffs, where the trees thin and the wind screams loud enough to drown a dying man's cry. When the first one lunged at me, I was already behind him. My knife opened his throat in a clean stroke. He dropped without a word. The other turned, hesitated too late. My spear pierced his ribs. That was too less to chase Kael, but there would be more. I wiped the blood from my blade, crouched, and scanned the forest below. No sign of fire, no smoke, no movement. Nothing to tell me where Kael had gone. I hated not knowing. He's reckless. He thinks too much. But he carries the flame, and that gives him value whether he likes it or not. If he dies, we all die, not because he's special, but because the spark is. I made camp in a hollow near the ridge, where the stone breaks into black rock. I didn't light a fire. Not out here. Too dangerous. Instead, I curled beneath my furs and listened. That's when I heard it. A howl. Long, deep, not wolf. Something older, something bigger. I stood and gripped my weapon. The sound came again. Closer. Then silence. I've hunted since I could walk. I've tracked beasts through fog, through caves, through snowstorms. I know what fear smells like, and I could smell it now. Thick in the air. Not mine. The forest's. Something was moving through it. Something that didn't belong. I stayed low, crept through the brush until I reached the old burial trees. Tall, dead, split open by lightning, seasons ago. That's where I saw the tracks. Massive, deep, clawed. Not bear, not cat, not anything I've ever faced. I touched one with my fingers, still warm. Whatever it was close. I should have turned back. Found Kael, warned him. But I didn't. I followed the tracks, because that's what I do. They led me to a clearing, one I'd never seen before. Half buried in snow, stood the remains of a long-dead creature, maybe a mammoth, or something even older. Its skull was split open, burned dot near it, fresh blood. Then, movement. From the edge of the woods, something stepped out. It was massive, covered in black fur, with a gaping jaw and 3 eyes, one glowing faintly above its forehead. It moved like smoke and thunder, ancient, hungry. I froze, not in fear, in understanding. This wasn't just a beast, it was one of the fanged ones, the old spirits the shamans whisper about, the ones who came before man ruled flame. And now, it was awake. I backed away slowly. I wouldn't fight it. Not here, not alone, not without the spark. If it had returned, the others would follow. The age of fire was ending, and something darker was coming. I ran, back toward where I hoped Kael would be. I had to warn him, had to warn everyone, because the hunt wasn't just about survival anymore. Something was hunting us now. The trees here don't move with the wind. They stand still, broken, scorched in places like they were once kissed by fire that never went out. Ina called it the dead forest, though I don't know if that's its true name or just something the old ones whispered about to scare children. We entered it on the 3rd day after the storm, after leaving the cave of the stone womb behind. The ember in my pouch still burned, stronger now, like it remembered where it came from. But that didn't bring comfort, only pressure. I felt like I was carrying a god's heartbeat in my chest. Ina limped beside me. Her wound had closed, but not cleanly. She never complained. She just kept walking, eyes alert, ears sharper than mine. She was always better at hearing what wasn't said, the quiet between the cracks in the world. That's why she stopped first. "Kael," she whispered, grabbing my arm. "Do you hear it?" I listened. At first nothing, then something. Wasn't a growl, it wasn't footsteps. It was like breath, dozens of breaths all around us, but never in one place. Like the forest itself was breathing. We crouched low, hiding behind a collapsed tree trunk, half buried in snow. I peeked over the edge. Shapes moved between the dead trees. Not Ashclan, not beasts, something else, tall, hunched, skin like dry bark, faces covered by bone masks. They moved without sound, gliding through the snow as if they were part of it. Each one carried something: spears made of glass, ropes made of sinew, and on their backs, skulls, human skulls, some still fresh. Ina's face went pale. She mouthed a word I hadn't heard in years: bone collectors. I thought they were a myth. Wanderers, nomads, not a real tribe, more like a curse, set to follow the scent of blood and fire, set to trade flesh for whispers, set to eat dreams. I held my breath. One of them stopped. Its mask tilted slowly, like it smelled something. My hand moved to the spark on instinct. I could feel it, pulsing, calling. Stupid thing was alive enough to betray us. I reached into the pouch, pressed my palm against the ember, muffling its glow. The creature turned. Its head twitched. Then it let out a sound, a deep, dry scream, like 1,000 bones grinding together. That was the signal. They rushed. We ran. No time to think. Just ran. I grabbed Ina and bolted through the trees, dodging roots, ducking branches. The forest screamed around us. The trees cracked. The air snapped. And behind us came the sound of bones clacking and feet that didn't touch the ground. One of them leaped from a tree. I turned mid-stride, drove my spear into its chest, but it didn't fall. It hissed. No blood, no pain, just rage. I pulled the spear free and kept moving. We broke into a clearing. A pit opened in the earth ahead, wide, dark, filled with fog. No time to stop. I grabbed Ina's hand. We jumped. The fall wasn't long, but the landing was brutal. We hit rock, slid through wet moss, and crashed into a pool of ice water. I pulled Ina out, coughing, shaking, barely able to stand. Above us, silenced on no pursuit, no screams, just darkness. We had escaped, but we had gone somewhere worse. I looked around. The pit was a cave older than the others. Deeper symbols carved in stone that I couldn't read. Faces, shapes, flames, death. The spark in my pouch glowed, brighter than ever. Ina looked at me. "What is this place?" she asked. I didn't answer, because deep inside me, I knew this wasn't just a cave, it was a gate, and something on the other side was waiting for us. We stayed in that pit longer than I wanted, maybe a day, maybe 2. There was no light, no sky, no way to know what time was doing above us, but I could feel something shifting inside the stone. The deeper we went, the louder it got. Whispers, not voices I could understand, more like pressure in my skull, like something trying to force its memory into my bones. Ina didn't hear it. She just sat near the wall, breathing slow, eyes closed, recovering. Her skin was pale. Her hands trembled even when she slept. The wound on her leg wasn't healing right. I didn't want to leave her alone, but I had to move. Something was calling me deeper. I lit a piece of resin-soaked cloth and walked farther into the tunnel. The walls here weren't natural. They were carved. Long hallways with sharp turns and low ceilings. At first, I thought it was a burial path. Then I started seeing the bones, not buried, but displayed. Hundreds of them, set into the stone, stacked into strange shapes. Some animal, some human, some neither. And then I saw the altar. At the end of a narrow corridor, surrounded by dried-out vines and ash, stood a circular chamber. In the center, a pedestal made of fused bone, shaped like a claw reaching upward. Resting in its grasp was a single blade. Old, jagged, carved from what looked like blackened mammoth tusk. But it had veins of red glowing through the surface. It pulsed like it was alive. I should have turned back. I should have left it there instead. I reached for it. The moment my fingers touched the hilt, the whispers stopped and were replaced by something worse. A vision, not a dream, not a memory, something deeper. I saw fire, but not like ours. A fire that didn't burn wood, it burned life. A child, tied and thrown into the flames. People kneeling, others laughing. A masked figure standing tall in the smoke, raising this same blade, high, eyes glowing red. Behind him, a wall covered in carvings, our ancestors, our clans. Burning. Then everything went black. When I opened my eyes again, I was on the floor. My hand still gripped the blade. Blood ran down my wrist. I didn't remember cutting myself. I stood up, trembling. The whispers were gone, but something had changed. The flame in my pouch, the spark was hotter, stronger. It burned through the leather like it was feeding off what I'd seen. I staggered back through the tunnels toward Ina. When she saw me, she stared in silence for a few seconds, then whispered, "What did you do?" I didn't answer right away. She reached out, touched my face, then pulled her hand back. "Your skin," she said. "It's warm, too warm." I looked at my hands. My veins glowed faintly beneath the skin, like something was moving through them that shouldn't be there. I sat beside her and said the only thing I could think of. "This place isn't just old. It remembers." Ina looked at the darkness around us, then at the spark. "It's changing you." I nodded. "I know." We left the chamber an hour later, still shaken. The spark pulsed brighter now, as if it had tasted something it liked, and wanted more. The forest above was still silent. The bone collectors were gone, for now, but I could feel it in the air. Something had shifted. Something deep beneath us had opened its eyes again, and it had seen me. I hadn't seen Vara in 11 days. The last time I heard her voice was when she screamed my name as the Ash clan descended on us like smoke. I didn't expect to see her again. I didn't allow myself to hope. But then she stepped out of the fog like death on two legs, blood on her hands, eyes locked on mine like I'd betrayed her just by surviving. She didn't say anything at first, just scanned me, the burns on my hands, the veins glowing faintly beneath my skin. The way Ina stood 2 steps away from me instead of beside me. Vara noticed everything. She always did. "You're changing," she finally said. "I know." She walked past me, toward the edge of the forest where we'd seen the bone collectors disappear days before. Her voice was low, rougher than I remembered. "I saw something in the northern ridge," she said. "It wasn't Ash Clan. It wasn't anything I've ever tracked." I stepped beside her. "Describe it." She looked at me, but I already knew. I'd seen it in a dream, or maybe the flame had shown it to me. 3 eyes, I asked. Vara didn't nod, didn't blink. "We need to move," she said. "It's not hunting food, it's hunting balance." We followed the old mammoth trails, hoping to find Tarag, or at least his remains. What we found instead was a clearing torn apart by something massive. Bones cracked open, trees splintered from the inside out, and in the center, a single deep footprint claws wider than my arm. Ina didn't speak the whole time. She just looked at me like I was supposed to fix this, like I carried not just the fire, but the answers. I didn't. That night, we camped without light. The spark burned beneath my chest, and I could feel it pulsing faster, like it knew the creature was near. like it was afraid. I woke up in the middle of the night to a sound I can't forget. A breath, not loud, not aggressive, just patienti. Opened my eyes and saw it, far beyond the trees, watching us. Its silhouette massive, its third eye glowing faintly in the dark. It didn't move. Neither did I. I kept my hand on the satchel, heart thudding against it. The fire inside it responded, flaring brighter for a second, and just like that, the thing vanished back into the woods, as if it had confirmed something. Vara came to me at dawn. "What does it want?" she asked. I stared into the embers of the dying coals we dared to light after the beast left. "It doesn't want the fire," I said. "Then what?" "It wants me." Because I wasn't just carrying the spark anymore, I was becoming part of it. I hadn't seen Vara in 11 days. The last time I heard her voice was when she screamed my name as the Ash clan descended on us like smoke. I didn't expect to see her again. I didn't allow myself to hope. But then she stepped out of the fog like death on two legs, blood on her hands, eyes locked on mine like I'd betrayed her just by surviving. She didn't say anything at first, just scanned me, the burns on my hands, the veins glowing faintly beneath my skin. The way Enna stood 2 steps away from me instead of beside me. Vara noticed everything. She always did. "You're changing," she finally said. "I know." She walked past me, toward the edge of the forest where we'd seen the bone collectors disappear days before. Her voice was low, rougher than I remembered. "I saw something in the northern ridge," she said. "It wasn't Ash clan. It wasn't anything I've ever tracked." I stepped beside her. "Describe it." She looked at me, but I already knew. I'd seen it in a dream, or maybe the flame had shown it to me. "3 eyes?" I asked. Vara didn't nod, didn't blink. "We need to move," she said. "It's not hunting food, it's hunting balance." We followed the old mammoth trails, hoping to find Torag, or at least his remains. What we found instead was a clearing torn apart by something massive. Bones cracked open, trees splintered from the inside out, and in the center, a single deep footprint, claws wider than my arm. Ina didn't speak the whole time. She just looked at me like I was supposed to fix this, like I carried not just the fire, but the answers. I didn't. That night, we camped without light. The spark burned beneath my chest, and I could feel it pulsing faster, like it knew the creature was near, like it was afraid. I woke up in the middle of the night to a sound I can't forget. A breath, not loud, not aggressive, just patient. Opened my eyes and saw it far beyond the trees, watching us. Its silhouette massive, its third eye glowing faintly in the dark. It didn't move, neither did I. I kept my hand on the satchel, heart thudding against it. The fire inside it responded, flaring brighter for a second, and just like that, the thing vanished back into the woods, as if it had confirmed something. Vara came to me at dawn. "What does it want?" she asked. I stared into the embers of the dying coals we dared to light after the beast left. "It doesn't want the fire," I said. "Then what?" "It wants me." Because I wasn't just carrying the spark anymore, I was becoming part of it. The weather turned before we reached the highlands. You can always feel it coming, not in the wind, but in your teeth. That deep cold that drills through bone, the kind that doesn't want to kill you fast. It wants you slow, silent, surrendered. We climbed toward the stone spine, a narrow ridge that cuts across the mountain like a scar. According to Ina, it was once the path to an old gathering place, a sanctuary of the first flame, or its grave. Terag waited for us there. I didn't believe it at first, thought it was just the wind playing tricks, but then I saw him, broad frame, fur cloak torn, arm in a sling, face hardened by more than pain. He didn't run, he didn't speak, he just stood at the edge of the cliff, watching the storm roll in. When I approached, he turned. "You're still alive," he said. I nodded. "You too." His eyes drifted to my chest. "You're different." "Yeah." He didn't ask questions. Terag never needed words to understand. That's what I respected about him. He didn't try to explain what didn't need explaining. Vara filled him in on what we'd seen. The bone collectors, the three-eyed beast, the fire inside me. He didn't flinch, he just asked one thing: "Do we fight?" We made camp in the hollow beneath the ridge, where wind couldn't reach and the cold was only cruel, not fatal. Ina spoke little. Vara sharpened her blades. Terag slept like he always did, eyes half open, arm wrapped around his weapon. I sat with the fire in my chest, trying to stay still. I couldn't. The storm outside wasn't just weather, it was something else. I could feel it pulling at me. The same pull the spark had back in the cave. Like something wanted me to move, to rise, to step into it and disappear. I stood and left the shelter. Snow slapped my face. Thunder cracked in the distance. Lightning flashed, and for a moment I thought I saw something on the ridge, a shape, tall and hunched, with 3 glowing eyes. I blinked gone dot, but I knew it wasn't my imagination. It was watching dot waiting. I pulled the blade I took from the altar, the one from the whispering chamber. The same black bone and red vein that had burned me once. It pulsed, not like the ember, but in rhythm, with my heart, and for the first time, I felt like I wasn't afraid anymore. I returned to camp. Before sunrise, Vara was awake. She looked at me like she was trying to remember who I used to be. I didn't say anything. There was no point. That version of me, the boy who feared cold, who begged the flame to save him, was gone. She asked, "What happens tomorrow?" I answered without thinking. "We climb." To where? I looked at the horizon, at the peak beyond the stone line, at the place where the spark inside me pointed without words. "To the throne," I said, "where the fire decides what lives and what burns." The climb took half a day. The wind tore at our skin. The rock cut our hands. The snow tried to erase every step behind us like we didn't belong here. And maybe we didn't, but I knew this was where it had to end. The others followed, but no one spoke. Not because of exhaustion, but because we all felt it. Something was waiting at the top. Something older than any of us, older than the flame, maybe older than death. By the time we reached the summit, the world had gone silent. No wind, no birds, just white air and stone. In the center stood the throne of fire. It wasn't carved, it wasn't built. It looked like it had always been there. Jagged, black, twisted from molten rock. Still steaming in places like it. Remembered heat from a time before man. The flame inside my chest pulsed. So hard I couldn't breathe. I fell to my knees. The others gathered round me. Ina whispered something, a prayer maybe. Tarag stood with arms crossed. Vara paced behind us, blades drawn. I reached into myself, not physically, but deeper. I felt the fire moving through my veins now, like it had become blood. I thought maybe I could speak to it, so I did. Not with words, but with silence, with surrender, with breath. If you are more than a weapon, show me. If you are a god, speak. If you are alive, answer. I waited. The wind didn't move. The rock didn't shift. The flame didn't speak. Only silence, not peace, not comfort, just absence. Vara stepped closer. "What now?" she asked. I didn't answer right away, because I knew what she meant. We had come all this way, crossed ash and bone and blood, to find the source of fire, the thing that started all of this. And all it gave us was nothing. Maybe the fire was never a god. Maybe it was just a force. Cold pretending to be warm. Hunger pretending to be hope. That night, I stood alone at the edge of the cliff. Below me, endless fog, broken peaks, and the faint glow of something stirring in the valley. I knew the Ash clan was coming. I knew the three-eyed beast was coming. And I knew the fire inside me was not going to protect me from any of it. But it could still choose. Choose whether I die as Kael, the last flame-bearer, or as something else entirely. We didn't sleep, not because of fear that had passed long ago, but because our bodies knew that when the sun returned, it might be the last time we saw it. Our breath rose in clouds, weapons rested beside us, and the fire inside me burned low and steady, not weak, controlled, like it was waiting for permission to become something else. Vara sharpened her blades in silence, eyes locked on the eastern pass. Ina sat near the edge of the ridge, face painted with old symbols. Tarag stood guard, unmoving, his wounds wrapped, his spirit louder than his voice had ever been. Me, I sat with my back against the throne, the spark in my chest pulsing like a second heart. The wind howled across the peaks, carrying with it the first echoes of our enemy. They were coming, the Ash clan. I could feel them. I didn't know how many, but it didn't matter. They would follow the fire until it was theirs or no one's. And behind them, the creature, the watcher in the trees, the three-eyed beast, the end of fire made flesh. We weren't defending a mountain. We were defending meaning, the right to hold warmth, to pass it on, to change the world with it. But the flame had never promised loyalty. It had only ever promised cost. They arrived before dawn. Shadows at first, then shapes, then war cries. The Ash clan moved like ghosts through the snow, skin painted with soot, eyes empty. No emotion, no hesitation, just hunger. We met them halfway down the slope. Tarag was the first to clash. His club shattered the ribs of the first attacker like bark. He fell before a second could strike him from behind. I screamed his name, but it was lost in the chaos. Ina stood at my side, her small knife a blur. She moved faster than I'd ever seen her. The symbols on her face glowed faintly, not from magic, but from belief. Vara led like she always did, first in, last out. I watched her disappear, into the thick of the battle, twin blades carving arcs of red through the grey storm. I fought with the bone blade, the one from the altar. It didn't slice, it tore. It groaned with every swing, like it remembered what it was made for. Blood soaked the snow. Screams broke the sky. Still, they came. I felt it before I saw it. A change in the air. Every fighter froze. Even the Ash clan. Even the dying. A silence fell across the battlefield like a blanket of ash. Then it stepped out from the tree line. Towering. Silent. Fur black as midnight. Wet with steam. Eyes, 3 of them burning with orange light. Not fire. Something deeper. It didn't run. It walked, and everything in the mountain moved away. It wasn't a beast, it was judgment. It locked its eyes on me, not the others. Not the throne, just me, because the flame was no longer carried. It was worn. I was its vessel, and it had called the thing that could finally test its right to exist. I stepped forward. No one followed. Even Vara stood still, her hands shaking. I walked alone across the blood-stained snow. When I stood before it, it did not growl. It did not attack, it watched. I could barely breathe. The flame in me responded. It roared, screaming against my ribs, trying to break out. My hands burned, my eyes burned, my skin cracked, and I understood. The fire didn't want me to win. It wanted me to burn, fully, completely. It wanted a sacrifice, but I chose something else. I screamed not in fear, but in defiance, and I attacked. We collided in silence. Its claws slashed. I ducked, rolled, struck low with the blade. It cut, but shallow. The beast shrieked, not in pain, but in rage. The fight wasn't long, it couldn't be. We were too old, too tired, too cursed. I don't remember the final blow. I remember light. I remember the fire leaving me, rising from my chest like a star exploding in silence. I remember falling, and I remember the beast still standing, bursting into flame from the inside out, not screaming. Accepting. When I woke, Ina was over me. Her face was stained with blood and ash. "You're alive," she whispered. I blinked, not sure, but the spark was gone. Not inside me, not in the pouch, just gone. Vara stood behind her, wounded but upright. Tarag sat nearby, leaning on his club, barely breathing, but smiling. And the mountain was quiet again. The fire was gone, but we were still here, and maybe that was enough. They burned the body at first light, not mine. His. The beast. The one with 3 eyes. The one that had stalked my dreams long before I ever saw it. The one the fire feared. Its body didn't rot. It didn't freeze. It didn't resist. It simply sat there, collapsed in the snow like a mountain that had forgotten how to stand. We piled wood around it, the oldest kind, from trees that only grow in the high passes, and when the flames caught, they turned blue. None of us spoke. We watched in silence as the last nightmare of the old world vanished into smoke. I sat on a stone nearby, chest still tight, ribs bruised, but different, not wounded, not healed, empty. The fire was gone, not lost, finished. I stayed on that mountain for 2 more days. The others tried to convince me to come down, but I couldn't. Not yet. Not until I understood what had happened. What I had become, what I was now, that the spark no longer burned inside me. Tarag left first. His leg was shattered, and he could barely walk, but he smiled the way a man smiles when the weight he carried finally drops. He didn't say goodbye, just nodded once. That was enough. Ina stayed the longest. She said nothing, just sat beside me each night, breathing slow, eyes on the stars. One morning I woke, and she was gone. Left a piece of charcoal wrapped in bark, with a single symbol drawn on it, a spiral flame. Cut in half, balance she had always understood before I did. Vara was the last. She stood across from me, eyes hard, shoulders tense. We hadn't spoken since the battle. There was nothing left to say, until she finally did. "You're not one of us anymore. I know. You're not one of them either. No. Then, what are you?" I looked out at the land below. Valleys of green and bone, rivers still frozen, smoke rising from distant fires we didn't start. "I don't think that matters anymore." She stared at me a long time. Then she reached into her coat and tossed something into the snow at my feet. "A flint stone. You'll need that." Then she turned and walked away. I waited until the world was silent again. And then, I walked not down the mountain, not back, to the clan, forward, into the unknown, into the place where the sun rises before anyone sees it, into the world the fire tried to warn me about. I don't carry the flame anymore. Now, I carry its memory. End. Maybe that's worse, because memory burns longer than fire ever could. Some say the fire is still alive, that it walked down the mountain. In the shape of a man, they see footprints where there should be none. They hear crackling in trees that never caught flame. They whisper stories around small village fires, telling children that if they lie, the last flame-bearer will find them. They think it's me, but it isn't. I left that part of myself up there, in the snow, in the ash, in the silence. All that remains now is the echo, and wherever it walks, the fire walks with it.